Welcome to another episode of Back to Life, Stories of Resilience. I'm your host, Danny Bader, best-selling author, entrepreneur, and a strong source of support for you as you travel this wonderful journey called life. We bring you powerful perspectives from people of all walks of life that have overcome challenges and traveled their own path of resilience to come out the other side and create lives of happiness and fulfillment. You're sure to be inspired and get some great takeaways that you can begin to apply in your life to create more happiness and more fulfillment, because that's what you're here for, right? Hi, everybody, and welcome to episode 33 of our Back to Life podcast. My guest today is Dr. Lori Whatley, and you are certainly going to enjoy the conversation we had with her. Lori is a clinical psychologist that just wrote a book called Connected and Engaged: How to Manage Digital Distractions and Reconnect with the World Around You. She has some interesting statistics about how we all are using and abusing our screens and all our connection to the digital world. So you want to listen in. She's got some really good points in there. One in particular, she talks about how comparison is the thief of joy. And we get into a little bit how many young children are stuck in that world of comparison through social media. She tells the story of a fiance who broke up the relationship because one of the people was on the phone way too much. She'll talk about how it impacts our sleep, and she'll give you 3 things that you can do to better manage your devices and your perhaps addiction to the devices and social media and all that come with that. She's going to give you some tips how we can create strong relational connections with people closest to us, minimize the stress that comes from our digital devices, and engage in our world with renewed energy and confidence so that we can live fuller, more vibrant lives. So let's get on with the conversation with Dr. Lori Whatley. Hi, everybody, and welcome to this episode. I'm excited to have with us our guest, Dr. Lori Whatley. She's just written a terrific book that we will get into. So, Dr. Lori, thanks a lot for joining us on the Back to Life podcast.
Hi, thank you so much for having me. I'm honored to be here with you today.
Oh, great. Yeah, I think our audience is going to get an awful lot of value out of this. So Dr. Lori recently wrote a book that I've gotten into a little bit here. It's called Connected and Engaged: How to Manage Digital Distractions and Reconnect with the World Around You. And we will get into that. Before we do, Lori, why don't you let us know and the audience know some things about you that we wouldn't get from your bio?
Okay, one thing that I like to share about myself is that I am a bookworm. And I love to read. And about 10 years ago, I had the New Year's resolution that I was going to start reading a book a week.
Mm-hmm.
I thought I would just do that for a year. And it became very difficult to carve out time as a working mom to do that. But I found that it was so restorative for me. And so I've been doing it. Sometimes I even make it to 2 books a week.
Wow, that
reading.
is good.
And absolutely love it.
Yeah. That's way beyond the number for the average person. I think the mean is that people maybe read 4 or 5 books a year, and that's just a small percentage. There's a percentage of people that don't read anything. You know, I don't know how many times, and you've probably heard this too with your books, people have said to me, I'm not much of a reader, so I didn't get through it. Or they did. You know, it's the first book they've read in years. Yeah.
Right.
What's one of your, we don't have to go too deep into this, or maybe we will. You know, on the Back to Life podcast, it's really the stories of people. Now, you've got great content here that we're going to talk about that's certainly going to support our audience around this whole world of addiction to our devices and things. But on your journey, what's been one of the toughest times you've had in your life? One of the most difficult challenges you moved through?
Oh, wow. Well, I think I've had a wonderful life, but I've also had many challenges in my life. Mm-hmm. You don't live to the age that I am, I think, without having had some obstacles that you've had to overcome. My life started out with a family of origin where there was addiction, mental illness. My mom was a single parent. And as it's interesting, as you know, we have our generations that we tend to repeat until we become healthy. We repeat these things that happen in our early life. I ended up being a single mom as well. Mm-hmm. And that, of course, was an obstacle to overcome. But also, I will say that every one of these obstacles that I've overcome throughout my life have all been invaluable to me and who I am, and have given me the tools that I need to be able to do my job effectively. So I can actually say that I'm very grateful. They were not fun at the time, very difficult. Some days where you think, oh my goodness, I'm not going to get through this, but you do.
Yeah.
Strong faith.
Oh yeah. Yeah. I was just going to ask you, when you have those moments where that little voice in your head says, oh man, I don't know if I can keep going. I don't know if I'll get through this. What's your go-to right there? Is it your faith?
Yeah. My faith is the strongest element in my toolbox. And absolutely, when we know the word and we know that he promises us that we will have obstacles, but that he will be with us in them, then we're able to lean into that and know that this too shall pass. And it does.
Yes. So good. I'm always reminded when we have a conversation here around Abraham Lincoln, who I certainly have enjoyed reading about him. He said, I've been driven to my knees many times by the overwhelming conviction I had nowhere else to go.
Oh, absolutely.
Pretty good, right? Pretty good.
Beautiful. That's a beautiful thing.
Yeah. Oh, it sure is. It sure is. Well, we certainly share that. Lori, Dr. Lori, what should I call you? Dr. Lori?
Whatever you want.
I'll go back and forth with that. So tell us about this book, Connected and Engaged, How to Manage Digital Distractions and Reconnect with the World Around You. Why write that book? Where did it come from? What's the background for it?
Actually, when I became an empty nester and began to really struggle with that and think, what am I going to do, now with myself, I went back to get my doctorate. And I was also practicing as a therapist, as a marriage and family therapist. And every day in my office, something to do with digital device usage popped up. Maybe a child was having trouble at school and we found out he was staying up all night on a screen. Parent didn't realize that. Or maybe a couple was having a problem because there was inappropriate texting going on, or maybe dismissive texting going on. And so I thought, this is becoming something that needs to be addressed. And I need to start researching so that I can, have the best tools for my clients. And so I ended up so amazed by all of the research on this and did my doctoral project on it. So the first book that I wrote was The Effects of Texting on the Marital Relationship. And my committee published that book. It's on Amazon, but it is so full of statistics. It's more of an academic read. Right. Even my own mother could only get through about half of it. I think it was quite boring. Yeah. So I decided I want something more user-friendly that talks about, a wider scope. And so that's how I came up with Connected and Engaged.
Yeah, I think it's great. Give us in the audience, what are some startling statistics? I guess startling is a good word. Statistics that get your attention for the general public, because most people, in their addiction to the screens, I don't know that they know they are addicted. So what are some statistics that might smack us upside the head to say, oh, wait a minute, around our digital usage?
That's a great question. And also the addiction is about escapism. So really it's the substance that we reach for when we want to escape.
Right.
And for many now, it's our digital devices. I thought this one was so interesting. I found somewhere in the research that more people have phones than toilets in the world. Isn't that so interesting?
More people in the world have phones as opposed to toilets.
Yes. Oh, yeah. When we think about other countries that don't have what we have, what we're fortunate enough to have here, we spend more than 3 hours a day on our phones. 51% of us look at our phones more than 3 times per hour. And 63 interactions per day on our phone.
Wow.
And these are averages. And
because I got to think a couple of my children are far above average in that world.
Absolutely.
They're far above average in many things, but certainly in this.
Yeah. And then over 90% of us look at our phone within 5 minutes of waking up.
That's within 5 minutes of waking up, huh? They go right to the phone. Yeah, I talk a lot about, when I work with people to win the morning hours, win those 0 hours, 0500, 0600, 7 in the morning. And, I typically wouldn't have my phone in my bedroom, but my wife leaves pretty early for work. She's a nurse. So when she leaves, I turn it on, just in the event she would need me on the way to work if there was an emergency, But I have found that now that it's there and I turn it on, it's easy just to flip to email or to text or something else. Whereas I would usually always keep it down in the office. So yeah, something that I need to continue to work on too. Interesting statistics, huh?
We know that just having our phone in the room with us interrupts our sleep patterns. Just having it. So I put mine out in the hall and plug it in. That way I hear it, but I'm not tempted to roll over in the night and pick it up and look at it when I can't sleep.
That's a good strategy. So you put it out there just in the event that it would ring. You don't hear all the pinging on texts and everything.
No.
Turn all that off. And if somebody needs you, for an emergency, you'll hear the ring.
Absolutely.
Yeah. I might suggest that to some people that I know in my life. So listen, what's the, you have this assessment, right? If our listeners are on there now, right now, because, my whole message is coming back to life, right? It's the podcast, it's the book.
Right.
And I think that our life, we could go from just living to being fully alive. And I think the phone a lot of times takes us more to just living. We're caught in the rut. We're stuck in the information. What's that assessment like where somebody could really take a look at their usage and figure out where they are on the scale of, healthy
right
or not?
Well, the very best assessment, and one I did on myself, was experiential. So I decided I was going to leave my phone at home one day and go and run errands for 30 minutes. Honestly,
and go
detox.
You know what our audience is saying now? Holy shit, I could never do that.
The detox, I was like, whoa, this is so hard. I felt it vibrating in my pocket, which it wasn't even there.
Yeah. I've had that happen. I have reached to a back pocket and felt my butt, and I'm like, wait, I just felt my phone.
That's the very best assessment, to measure how much anxiety you have when you do that. Now, I have assessments on my website, and they're free assessments. One for businesses, because you can't imagine $92 billion a year is lost in the workplace due to people being on their social media during work hours. So I go in and work with small businesses a lot on this, and digital distractions that interrupt creativity, productivity. And so I have the business assessment, and it's only 10 questions. And then I have also personal, individual, family assessment rolled into one, which is also 10 questions. And then, people send me notes and say, I just did this and I want to ask you about this. And I'm glad to answer the question and try to help them more if they need that.
Yeah, I like that. Hey, listen, towards the end of our time together, we got a lot more to talk about, but we'll give people where they can contact you. But right now, if somebody's thinking about that, what's the website where the assessments are?
It's drloriwhatley.com.
Lori Whatley, WHATLEY.com, Dr. Lori. Okay, we'll give that again, and we'll put it in the show notes for sure. So with this addiction devices, because I've certainly seen it grow over time. I remember, years ago, I was a bartender at a place called Houlihan's back in King of Prussia. And this is in the late 80s. And I remember this one guy came in, he was for, it was like Life Fitness. Fitness clubs were starting to get popular. And there was this one in King of Prussia. And it's highly densely shopping mall and everything. Yeah. And this guy, I think the company was from Sweden, and he was an executive. And I remember he was really cool, kind of smooth guy. And he came into the bar one afternoon about 5:00, and he put on the bar this thing that was like almost as big as a shoebox. And me and my buddy were looking at him, I'm like, what is that? And he opens it up, and it was one of the first mobile phones, but it literally was a whole headset, like in a box almost. And we looked at it, and we made a phone call on it. And we're like, this is cool. And I think now, from there until now, less than 30 years. I mean, what we have right now, and certainly got a lot of goodness to the technology.
Absolutely.
I mean, the ability to take pictures and share pictures with people, and FaceTime with your family when they're far away, and through this pandemic. But talk to us a little bit about some of the really horrific outcomes in life that this addiction to screens is causing.
Well, I think, and we're seeing a lot of this, I just saw the statistics are really up right now on some of the darkness of being online. So pornography viewing is way up right now. And of course, all of that tied to being isolated.
Yeah.
and depressed and having anxiety. But, many stories come to mind, contributed to a story in the Wall Street Journal. And it was a story of a mom and her son, and he went off to college. And after a few months there, she realized that he had a gaming addiction. Parents are not even aware of. They're not aware of what their kids are doing on their screens at night after they go to bed, or, when they're supposed to be doing homework or whatnot. And the story's about the struggle, to get that child the help that he needed. And he obviously ended up having to leave school. Wow. And flunked out. And the problems that go with that, kids that they aren't out exercising, they're not moving around, they're gaming 24/7, they gain a lot of weight, they become unhealthy, depressed, anxious. Yep. So much comes along with this. Our bodies are meant to move. And when we're sitting in front of our screens 24/7, we're not moving our bodies. But I want to agree with you that technology is a wonderful thing if it's used properly. Yeah. It enables me to have clients all over the world in places where there are no therapists. Yeah. And that's a beautiful thing. But I respect technology. I realize its power, and balance is the key element.
Yeah. And I'm sure the addiction that some of the folks have, some people have to the screens is, certainly I've seen the articles around pornography and what that does to people and children and relationships, and how readily available it is. The online gambling, for sure, makes it much more readily available. And I think, what is it?
Online shopping.
Oh yeah, shopping. In our move right now, gosh, I got the Wayfair app, I got the Amazon app.
Yeah.
Anytime I go on, I'm like, and then of course they pick up my patterns, and now, I get all kinds of things for bar stools and counter stools and pull out sleeper sofas. I'm like, how did they know? I only looked at one or two sites.
Exactly. And I'm like, and I didn't know I needed that, but maybe I do.
Yeah. So see, that's the interesting thing too, that fuels your addiction, because these retailers, and we all do it in our business. We're trying to find an audience that would be interested in what we offer, right? And it should be of value. But that's just crazy. But I guess, I had a guy on, John Breen, not too long ago who talked about addiction and recovery. He was talking more about alcohol addiction, but he used a term that said it's a disease of progression. And it really kind of stuck with me, because over the years, I've certainly I've been challenged, and some in my family with drinking too much. And it really stuck to me. So how does that correlate to this addiction? Is it that progression where you're doing a little and then a little bit more and a little bit more?
Absolutely. And it's a process addiction, in that this is something that we now need, especially during the pandemic. So many of us are depending on being online to do our work. And so what happens is it's like going down the rabbit hole. We're online to do our work, and it just feeds into 5 hours, 6 hours, 7 hours. Yeah. And we become more isolated. We're not getting out. We're not getting sunshine. Yeah. We're doing everything online, and we begin to not realize the importance of connecting with other humans. And, there's just almost not anything you can't make possible online. Yeah. But that doesn't mean that it's healthy for us.
Yeah. Yeah. No, all things in moderation, for sure.
Right. Right.
All good things in moderation.
Yeah.
Oh no, I know what you're talking about. I remember when our daughter Lizzie was in, I guess it was like high school or whatever, I'd go in to say goodnight to her, because I want to talk a little bit about get to that sleep thing. And, it would be lit up like, I would tease her like, this is NASA. It's like you're launching a spaceship, because, it's the MacBook over here, it's the iPad over here, it's the phone and the cords and everything. I'm like, honey, shut it down a little bit. What does all the screen, and, I've talked to my wife about this as well, because she'll watch some shows or whatever. And what's the deal with the light from the screen as it impacts our retina and our eyes and the release of what we need to do to go to sleep, those hormones and things?
Right. Well, melatonin is in our body naturally, and it's the sleep chemical in our body that assists with sleep.
Right.
And when we're in front of a screen excessively, in an imbalanced way, it halts the production of melatonin. It also stimulates our brain in a way that we have interrupted sleep.
Right.
So we're going to sleep, and then when we get to sleep, it's interrupted.
Right.
And it's interesting because you can see how this works, because I wake up in the night and I'm not sleeping. So why not just check my emails?
Sure.
Oh, there's a bad email. That really worries me.
Yeah.
Now I'm not going back to sleep.
And now you're caught in that loop, right?
Yeah. So
You know,
maybe I'll just shop a little on Amazon.
Yeah. Yeah. I hear you.
And
Wow.
then the next day we're tired.
Right.
We're anxious.
Right.
We're
What's a good rule? What's a good rule of thumb before you go to bed? Say, how long, when you put your screens down, whatever screen is, primarily phone, I guess,
right,
or laptop, how soon should you detach from that before you go to bed?
1 hour at least, minimum.
At least 1 hour.
We know from research at least an hour to begin to bring your body down and your limbic system down.
Yeah.
And it's not just the blue light, but it's also the content. And is it disturbing? Is it or is it stimulating? That sort of thing. So 1 hour, I have been saying 2, but I've gotten so much pushback, and I realize for a lot of people that's just not doable. Yeah. And so I'd rather see them try 1 hour than go too far with.
Oh, sure. Any way to develop a new habit is increments, right? Put the phone down 30 minutes before, and then do that for 3 nights, and then move to 40. So it's not as drastic as going, 2 hours, because that's not going to work, right? Yeah. You're not going to build that.
Small change. Yeah. We know behaviorally as humans that if we want to make a change, we piece together small changes.
Absolutely. Absolutely. One of the things, you and I were speaking, the sign here is to be still. And that's one of the principles of Jackrabbit that I talk about. And the way that it really helped me is, I had a tragic accident years and years ago, and I went to the Outer Banks of North Carolina in a very depressed state. And it was the stillness down there of a closed up beach town that really allowed me to hear something that I needed to hear, that allowed me to heal and move through that tragic time. So that's why be still is such a core principle for me. And I got a nice little retreat in January for a few days. And what I do with my phone then is I turn it so only the phone number of my wife can come through, right? You put it into that mode for an emergency.
Wonderful.
And, it's weird. And I've been doing retreats for years now. That first couple hours, it is weird, but then you kind of cross over a threshold where you're like, this is fantastic.
It feels so good.
Yeah. So I think that's what I say to people sometimes is, and I want to hear about, how powerful the stillness is. When you think about when we're in utero, right? When we're our first 9 months of our lives, when we're in our mom's belly, and I know you have quite a few children. I'm one of 8 and we have 3. I always tell people, I say, listen, man, that's absolute stillness in there. It's quiet and it's warm and it's peaceful and everything's taking care of you. And, then you come down the birth canal and you're born and, you get held upside down, you get smacked on the ass. Right. And now you got all this social media, you got thousands of emails. And people get a kick out. They laugh, but they don't understand that, stillness is such a powerful state for us.
Yeah.
So when we're going to the social media and the addiction, what are the 2 or 3 things you think people are going there to help them with?
Right. Well, first of all, we do get addicted to the chaos, which begins at birth. We come into this loud, noisy world, and that continues. But as you said, there's so much restoration in being still. And I went to South Africa for 30 days, and I did the same thing with my phone. So I did not interact at all. I was very busy on safaris and whatnot there, but I did not interact at all. It was so restorative. At first, not. A lot of anxiety. By the time I got home, I didn't even know where my phone was. Didn't care. On the way there, I was like guarding my laptop. On the way back, it was in my suitcase. I hope it gets back, but if it doesn't, okay. And I came back with so much peace. And, there's something to be said for that in this world.
It really is. Yeah.
But we have to consider too, I don't know if you've seen The Social Dilemma, the man that, I think that's where I saw the man that came up with the like button on social media was on there talking about, they know, these people that make these apps, the developers, that they know how to keep us coming back.
Sure.
Because that's how they make a living. The longer we tune in, and the more money they make.
Sure.
So unfortunately, they can capitalize on that.
Mm-hmm.
And so let's just use the like button, for instance. I post something on, and I'm just as guilty as everyone. I post something on social media, and I go back in 15 minutes. Ooh, I've gotten 5 likes. Wow.
Yeah.
You get a dopamine hit. You get
Yeah.
a dopamine hit that is very subtle. You don't even realize. It's no different than the substance of alcohol or cocaine or any of those that give you dopamine hits that
Right.
draw you in.
And dopamine is the pleasure neurotransmitter, right? We feel
Absolutely.
good, right? A little hit of dopamine, we feel good.
Yeah.
Same thing when we mark off something on our to-do list, right? A little dopamine, done. Yep.
Yes.
Interesting.
So imagine if you're already a little depressed or maybe even anxious, and you're making a lot of cortisol and a lot of adrenaline. You go there, you see the like, and you see that you've gotten some. You get that hit of dopamine. It counteracts those negative, bad mood hormones in our body, and so you see how that works.
Yeah.
It's very effective. It's like the slot machines in Vegas, the intermittent scheduling release, where you go, you don't get anything, but after 5 pulls, you get just enough to pull 6 more times.
Oh my gosh, that sounds so familiar. So familiar. I don't know how many times I've been in a slot machine when I go, okay, I'm just going to do 5 more. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And then I'm like, nah. Yes.
Yeah.
I like all your quotes in the book. And the book, as I said, everybody, Connected and Engaged, is just a wonderful. I've only gotten into it a little bit, but I can tell right away how great it is. The chapters have a theme, and the chapters are short. Be wonderful to read right at bed. Read a little bit of this because it's very positive and inspirational. There's a great quote.
Tried to very intentional about making it positive.
You sure did. I'll tell you. And I just went through, and I love quotes. This chapter 11 is community. And Mother Teresa's quote is, the most terrible poverty is loneliness and the feeling of being unloved. How many people do you think go to social media to try to fill that void? Number one. And how is that magnified maybe when I go to social media and I see all these personalities out there whose lives are perfect, when in reality they're probably not. And then I, especially maybe as a younger person, I compare myself to them. What are your thoughts around that?
Oh, wow. Great question, Danny. So comparison is the thief of joy. And children they're not developed.
Comparison is the thief of joy.
Absolutely.
I like that one.
Yeah. And so first we need to know that. And second, we need to know that what we see here is not necessarily truth.
Right.
Children's brains are not developed enough to understand that. As adults, we understand it a little bit more, but when we're in pain, we're just reaching for that thing that makes us feel better. I heard someone say fake book, and it makes sense, not Facebook, but fake book, because there is so much that is not real.
Yeah.
There's so much that is done on social media that is manipulative and controlling.
Yeah.
And it can control our moods. It can control, what we're seeing is not necessarily truth. And we have to realize that before we go into a downward spiral comparing.
Yeah. So the biggest impacts of this really is our physical health, right?
Mental.
Physical health, inability to sleep in there. For the kids that are gaming and on there, they're not moving as much. So it's that overweight. Relationships are suffering. When you and I first talked about doing this podcast, and I'm certainly glad you came on, you told me the story about a young guy that broke up with his fiance. They were engaged, and he looked at her and he said, "We're done. You are addicted to your phone." Right? I mean, tell us about that story. What was that?
Yeah. It's amazing because people don't realize the relational disconnect that comes about from being online too much. I mean, usually when I work with couples, there's a third party that comes into the relationship and causes disconnect. It's another person. Now we're having it be our screens, because maybe a couple will come in for marriage therapy, and he'll say she gets into bed at night and she's on her Kindle reading, or she's shopping on Amazon, or she's talking on social media. Or maybe a wife says, well, we went on our date and he was playing fantasy football.
Yeah.
And I felt very dismissed. So it's kind of the same dynamic. It's just that our competition is now our screen instead of another person, which sometimes there is another person on the other end of that screen. Sure. I realize. But yeah, I think relationally with our children, I use this example on a radio show this week. When our kids get into the car with us at the end of the day, they are, that's the best time that we have with them. They can't go anywhere. We get their undivided attention, or we can just listen to them interacting and know everything we need to know about their day.
Yeah.
Well, now kids are getting into the car. Mom is texting. Mom's talking to someone. The kids get in, they turn on the TV screen on the back of the seat, and everybody goes into their digital world. No connection, no interaction.
Right.
And I'm really beginning to see that generation in my office who feels lonely, who feels disconnected.
Yeah.
I'm really, and I'm not sure how much you know about the attachment theory, about our primary relationships and the way we attach in them, and how much we felt noticed by our parents, and how that feeds into our later relationships. But we're starting to see some of that now.
Yeah, that's wild for sure. Yeah, I see the texting, how many times you go by somebody and they're on their phone. And, even this conversation and preparing for this has really made me more aware of where I have opportunities to distance myself. So mine was, okay, if I'm at a red light, I'll take a look. But then the light changes and you're into something, and you said, then you just kind of keep rolling. So this has been good for me. I think it really all comes down to choice, because I think the audience out there, if we had to kind of make an assumption, let's just make an assumption of the people that we're talking to or kind of offering this to them. I got to think 80% of them, 8 out of 10 have an opportunity to get off the screens a little less, a little bit more, get off, right? So what would you say is the, and I like your quote in here from J.K. Rowling about Harry Potter. She says, it's all in the choices, Harry. I think Dumbledore may have said that to him, right? Or whatever. It's all in the choices that we make. Let's give folks, and then we'll figure out where they can find you. And I have one more question for you too. But right now, many people listening are going, yep, Danny, Lori, I get it. What are some choices they can make? And we talked about a couple of them. What are 3 or 4 choices they can make that's going to pull them back from their screen time?
Well, I think that we have to be intentional about noticing how involved are we. Right. So we have to notice that, and then we need to look for small ways that we can pull back.
Right. So what are 3, what's a good strategy? Because I'm here. I'm saying, okay, I got it, Lori. I'm with you. I need to pull back out of this. What are 3 things I can start to experiment with? That are going to get me away from the screen a little bit and more into what's around me.
We know that goals of tech are engagement. So disengagement is the goal. So let's say this morning I'm going for a 10-minute walk to start my day and clear my head.
Right.
Well, first, I'm not going to look at my phone for the first hour after I get up.
Okay.
And I'm going to
no phone for the first hour.
Yeah. And I'm going to start my day interacting with the world, not seeing any negativity. That's the very first thing I recommend. And people see a vast difference in how their day, because how your day begins has a lot to do with the way that it goes from there on. So keeping that in mind, and then putting it down and going for a walk. Let's say someone is working online a lot. I see 3 clients, and then I go for a 10-minute walk. So I leave all technology behind.
Okay.
I can't tell you how many people I see walking with their phone,
right, or talking.
Yeah, and so they're missing the point.
Sure.
They're missing the point of the beauty around them, hearing the birds, all of those things that bring our limbic system down,
right,
and help our anxiety levels.
Right. One thing I do, I'll just throw it out there. When I exercise, get downstairs, lift weights, or whatever I'm doing, I like music. So a lot of times I got my Spotify and I just run it through the Bluetooth. But I found even when I'm doing that, between sets or whatever you're doing, I'll go over real quick and look at something.
Yeah.
So sometimes I just leave the phone up here. Now I sacrifice having music down there.
Yeah.
But, it's a different experience. You're more in tune to your exercise versus, okay. What's one other thing? So don't use it when you wake up in the morning. Take the walk, exercise maybe without it.
And absolutely an hour before bedtime, no screen. If we could just implement those three, I mean, I have many more, but I think those can be pivotal for us.
Yeah.
So those are three that are doable right off the bat.
And what's the top one for the population between 16 and 23 or 24? What's the best thing they should do?
No phones at night in your room. No screens in proximity to where you're sleeping.
No screens
at night.
Yeah.
I'm seeing so many teenagers and 20-ish who are on and off all night long, and they're not able to focus the next day. They're anxious, and so that's to me one of the most important elements of being mindful.
Yeah, got it. So where could folks find you and take a look at the book? Give us where can they get you?
My website is drlorywhatley.com.
Great.
And contact information for me is on there. Also, after I wrote my book, my publicist wanted me to have a social media presence, and that's been helpful. I've been able to interact with many readers, and so I'm on Facebook and Instagram and LinkedIn at Dr. Lori Whatley.
Yeah,
so
that's cool.
Yeah, that's the two places to get me.
Good. That's great. I'm sure the book's doing great. So here's my question for you, Lori. You are at lunch, dinner, coffee with somebody, and you're never, ever going to see them again. And you're having a wonderful time, and it's not a sad time. But they say to you, all right, Lori, thanks so much. I'm glad our paths have crossed. Never going to see you again. What are three things that I should pay attention to on this journey called life?
Well, I'm going to have to first look over your shoulder and say, be still.
Right on.
That is, I too have that same, I have that same little sign around. I absolutely believe that we are all running from ourselves at times. And when we are still, as in the sabbatical that you talked about, when you went away to the Outer Banks and got to know yourself, and in your retreats, we walk away with so much knowledge and having conquered so much fear.
Right.
I always want to say, why are you so afraid to be still? Let's talk about that. What is it scaring you about getting to know yourself?
Right.
And because we're all lovely people, we come to this world with everything we need to survive. But then the world gets in the way. Yeah. That would probably be number two. Then the world gets in the way. So we have to start eliminating that conditioning or those learned bad habits.
Good.
And clear them out and simplify our lives so that we can be with ourselves.
Right. Got it.
Well, that's kind of two. And the other one is always be curious. My curiosity has driven me. It drove me to get my doctorate. It drove me to go to medical school, get my marriage and family therapy license, being curious about other people, not just myself. There's so much wonder out there in others. And when we're sharing with others and connecting with others, and of course, in order to have real connection, real in-person connections, we do have to disconnect from our screens.
That's cool. I love it. Yeah, be still for sure. So listen, Lori, I have certainly enjoyed our paths crossing, and I'm very sure that our audience will find some value in this, just in slowing them down. So a couple things that I'll take away real quick is, there is a threshold with social media and technology and screens that we all cross. They are good to a certain point. And then on the other side of that, there's a lot of unhealthy things that start to show up, which take us away from being fully alive, and we're just living, and we're not stepping into the greatest version of ourselves, which is so important. I think the one thing you said there, comparison is the thief of joy. and it kind of hit me because even when I'm out there, I'm looking at, who are the other speakers? Who are the other authors? Who are the other podcasters? Oh, they have more followers than me. They have more ad revenue. So I appreciate you offering that. And also, I just appreciate that you mentioned early on that your faith and your connection to something bigger than us is the foundation for you. And I hold that as well. And I'd offer everybody out there to just take a look at that and make sure that they're interacting with that as best they can, because our world needs it.
Absolutely.
So until our paths cross again, Lori, I appreciate you being here. Everybody out there, move from living to just being fully alive, because that is what you're here for. Take care. And that's a wrap on another episode of Back to Life, Stories of Resilience. Be sure to share this episode with your people and connect with me on my social media platforms. You can also visit www.dannybader.com to get some cool Jackrabbit t-shirts and support the vision to end ALS, as well as my books and my online trainings. So until next time, I am certain the powerful perspectives you heard will inspire you to make some changes to how you think about your life, begin to experiment with some new actions, and create more happiness and fulfillment in your life, because that is what you are here for, right?